You can see the difference, right? So, yeah.
Okay. Is it? I think I was better earlier, right? This. So if you can bring it down a little bit, I myself want to feel that I am natural. This doesn't feel very natural. Okay. This is perfect. Thank you.
So this is the end result with SPSS, which comes out like, let's say, what are the variable factors, right? Which are like accounting for an attrition. Like, let's say we have worked on an attrition model. So
Right.
I'm just giving the analogy on with respect to
So
the
when it
same.
comes about really, doing, let's say, factor analysis, variable
Absolutely.
interaction and those things, you
Absolutely.
really require, such kind
But
of
with respect
statistical
to
tools.
Excel, we are yet to have that hold, because when you have a business problem and you replicate the same, which will give you the result wherein like Excel is being provided, right, to give you that sort of a result. For that, I believe that we need some more sessions to understand where, so towards Excel, which is the end result, what is that which provides us an intel that this is the attrition, this is the percentage which you have to go, this is the standard deviation. Like, so there has to be more learning on the Excel side.
Okay.
Compared to SPSS,
Yeah,
which is more explicit today.
So which makes sense if you think about it. The kind of analysis we do it on day-to-day basis, right?
Yeah.
I personally believe that 80% of those analysis can be done in Excel.
Exactly.
With no issue at all. It's could be, but think about it's more like this. I'm just thinking about the right analogy. The whole idea is that the which tool you are more familiar with, right? Where exactly your speed and comfort is, right? If your speed and comfort is with Excel, possibly even though the steps are little longer in Excel, you may be able to achieve the output much more faster and focus onto the quality of the output rather than really getting hooked up with what to do, what not to do, which function to use, which not to use. But this is the stage where you have just started. Once you'll become comfortable with using spaces or the tools like spaces, it would be just a cakewalk for you, because you know exactly which are the different functions you need to call in to really look into the data pattern and those things. So my suggestion would be that when you are really looking into all these different techniques, continue with your Excel journey. Do not dump it, but continue really practicing your statistical tool as well. If you'll not practice, that knowledge will just diminish, possibly in another 1 month or so, not more than that. Okay. Easily you can find these tools available, right? Try to really see, tooling is one of the thing which anybody in analytics should really get comfortable with. I'm not a big fan of really going and coding everything, because the future is all about tools which is available to us ready-made, where you may possibly do a lot of drag and drop and really let the model or the tool do the job for you. But your job is more to really refine that model, optimize that model. Not only that, the output which comes out of the tool, you should be able to explain. You should be able to understand the different coefficient which you might have studied in class day 2 and day 3, right? And then after, when you are making a presentation or the narrative to the C-suite community, you would be able to really answer questions if, let's say, someone, a geek sitting in that crowd and asking you all those questions which drives us nut today, right? That's the whole purpose. That should be the whole idea of all of us to really move forward and start making that journey. Once we'll get comfortable, coding and all will just come in. And if you're not naturally get slow, it's just more like if very very bad example though, but let me pick it up since it is weekend. If you have ever tried alcohol, right? Some of the alcohols goes very smooth when it is like taken with the on the rocks, right? Some of them may not really go that smoothly, but the point is that initially people feel challenged with that, but when they get used to it, it goes very smooth with that. The whole idea is the tool is also like that. Coding is more like that. Initially it really feels like, hey, can I really code it? Answer is no. You may really feel difficult, but start to get comfortable with those terminologies, those coefficients, those coding methodology, and so on. Once you get comfortable, I think you should be fine. Okay, so go slow with that, but keep doing it. I think that is the mantra for day 2 and day 3 from my perspective. Let's go to day 4. Day 4. Okay. So what was covered that day? Because I think this is a new addition this time. Dashboards was not part of the last year batch. So what was the
extensive use of Excel.
perfect?
So the intent was, even though you do not have an exposure towards the macro side, but you can replicate the same, or you can provide the same sort of results using an Excel without knowing the macros as well. So that's what the facilitator who started with the discussion, right? He started off saying that. So that was really great, I would say. A lot of things are like on the dashboarding side, inclusive of your slicers and the other aspects also. Those were really new for us.
Slicer is one of the very
Yeah.
fantastic tool. In
Yes.
case if you have been really been bombarded with creating a dashboard where people love seeing complex things, right? Whether they understand, they use or not, irrespective of that. It's I don't know, somehow it is a human nature. As soon as I tell you that today I'm going to teach you, machine learning and artificial intelligence, I'm sure your curiosity level will go, threefold at least. Doesn't matter whether tomorrow onwards we use that or not, irrespective of it, right? And that's what exactly happens with the Excel too. All of us, if you see in our day-to-day job, including my own organization, right, we create so many dashboards using Excel, right? I don't know how exactly people consume that information too, because most of the Excels are like too much of information dumped into that one page. We try to really use the real estate more like, we wanted to rent that place and want to get, ROI as much as possible. I think the intention should be something else when you design the dashboard, right? More from the visualization perspective and the content or the intent of that particular dashboard. But the slicer is one of the very, very effective way of really, compressing a lot of information with the interactivity in place, where people can really play with it, drill down, and look at different cuts of the information without really deviating from the consistent format which you have designed, right? So in case if you are building something which needs to be consumed by many stakeholders, many functions, many geographies, many cities, slicer is the way to really go about it. And it is not very complex too, right? I'm sure all of you would start feeling very comfortable with it, going forward. So feel free to use that. By end of the day today, you will see me now. I am promoting Excel. By end of the day today, I will move away from Excel and I would say stop using Excel, but keep using Excel as much as possible. Okay, so good. So day 4 was all about really dashboarding. Was there any conversation about what kind of visualization to use when you do dashboarding? Importance of visualization, importance of narrative coming into that. Was there any conversation about that? Okay. Because these learnings would start really coming in when we go and start doing your capstone project. We would like to see how exactly your visualization is coming into life there. Okay, cool. So that was day 4. And just wanted to tell you one thing. You said that people who are not comfortable with macro, now in Excel easily you can do stuff without really knowing macro. Some of the slides which is designed in my presentation is not my creation. Basically today PowerPoint gives you an opportunity. As soon as I dump my pictures into that with my thought process, it gives me at least 6 to 7 design options, right? So machine learning runs behind it. It really looks into the pattern and some of the likes, dislike, and then after you go and just shows it. See, what is my purpose? My purpose is not to invest time into defining that REVA University logo should be going here. This should be the font size. My intent should be the story which I'm going to tell to you. Let the machine do rest of the things, and then I pick the design and go about it. I think the same way the Excel does it for the macro, where you do not really need to understand each and every function behind it. But if you're able to understand what to do, where to drop, what to really pick it up, then I think you should be much more comfortable with it. Make sense? Day 5.
So that was with.
Can I go to any other table? This table.
You can.
What was the tool? Orange. Okay, I haven't heard about it, so I'll learn with you. Yeah, go ahead. So it's more like a front layer sitting in front of many sheets, which you can use it to really connect, create joints, and then after really create your visualization using the multiple sheets. Okay, makes sense. Is it available free of cost? Yes. Okay, it's a open source. Okay, cool. I really prefer open source at any point of, because our learning doesn't stop only because my organization is not able to give me. It should not be the case. So open source is the way to really go about it. Funny is already smiling about this. So that is the change which we drive it in the organization, that they should start really looking into it. But the case which we need to make it to them is, hey, you are going to save cost, not me, right? I can tell you, if the financial services have started opening to open source, anybody else can open to. It's a very straight way of really making a case for it. I mean, we are the very regulated environment, and today we talk always about open source. We have been a big user of SaaS. We are moving away from SaaS. Very straightforward. Why should I keep investing money in that? And open source is crowd sourced knowledge which is coming to us. So the tool and technique and the power really becomes much more stronger as more and more people really use it. Okay, next day. What was the next day? After that, day 5.
So that was on the workforce planning and talent acquisition and
That was
analytics.
Sanjay.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I'm
That
sure
was
you must have
being-
enjoyed that conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
That was great. That was being headed by Mr. Sanjay Silvankar, who actually talked about the OWP model, the operational workforce planning. And then also he gave us so the great thing about that, the first half of the session was we got to know about the RMZ group and the importance of the RMZ, the resource management group, right? And he talked about the scope which is there in today's world on the analytics space, right? So there are a lot of analysis which is happening on the RMG side, wherein a person who is interested to venture their career towards, right, as an HR or from an operational standpoint, can venture into the RMG side. So that was a really groundbreaking reality which he showed up. And then towards the next half of the session, it was completely being dominated on the POFU model, which was on the post-offer follow-up side. So wherein he also talked about a few details and more intel on the talent acquisition side, wherein it was more emphasized on the sort of resumes which are coming in, or let's say especially on the talent acquisition side, to implement the model in a better way, so that so let's say for an example, there is a certain requirement for us. So for an example, we have an SFDC requirement today, right, which is pretty super niche today in the industry, right? There are interviews which are happening. The manager is taking interviews for almost 50, 60, or let's say 200, right? But you talk about the ground reality, SFDC professionals in today's industry are hardly 70 or 80 odd full-time employees across India, or across, I would say, in Bangalore, right? So if a manager is having a continuity in rejecting those candidates after interviewing and all, right? So without having any results, so that gives us a crunch wherein we end up with no results, right? So he also talked about how the interview process can be better in a way wherein there would be a list of questionnaires which will be which can be initiated by the talent acquisition side to the managers, that this is the certain format, and you have to provide the intel, the detail, through a point-based system. Let's say if it is very easy to say a person that, okay, this person is not good for this position, but if you have that categorized in pointers, let's say, what is this a percentage of skill he is having for SPSS, right? What is that which he is having for let's say a people management, right? So when you point rate that, so that sort of an expectation, or that sort of a result in a numerical form, in a number, that would make more sense, and that will mitigate the risk of the selection criteria would increase, rather than it will be just a manager would be just coming and saying that, okay, this candidate is not good enough for a selector. So
Sure.
That's how,
So let me ask you this. So on day 5, when you went through workforce planning, and what you may be aware about workforce planning, I'm sure a new set of thoughts and ideas have come in. If I ask you to really reflect on previous 4 days and what you might have seen, previous 4 days before day 5, okay, uh, what do you think? What additional? I mean, was there any kind of learning which you could apply onto day 5, which was being taught, in terms of visualization, in terms of the way the data and the problem statements were framed?
Exactly.
That's right. Perfect. And today we will be talking about, I would like to really, share one tool or the framework which we use it, how exactly you do
Right.
that, right? Because this is one of the biggest disconnect which we face on day-to-day basis, that, how do I really think about, learning to the business outcome? Or maybe, let's say if I'm talking about engagement, how do I really connect that with the business outcome and so on? So we'll go through it. I'll possibly be able to hand over a framework which might give you some trigger point that how exactly you go and start looking at the problem. And we'll talk in few minutes about that. Anything else after day 5?
In fact, about Sanjay's class, usually the previous classes, what we had, it was kind of a learning what we had. But Sanjay left with few case studies with the different parameters like competency, culture, engagement. How differently we can look at, as what he said, as a data problem. He gave a different perspective to it. Even though I left the class, I was thinking about, ऐसा भी देख सकते हैं ना.
Perfect. So attrition is done, engagement is done. 2 topics picked up from today.
No. He
That
just
is the
gave the
whole-
problem
that is the whole
statement.
idea of making you reflect onto what we have covered, so that my workload keeps going down.
Then we stay silent for the day.
Okay, thank you, Sanjay. So what else? What else after this? Compensation. That was Ramesh, right? Yeah. Okay. And anything else? Since it was also about CNB, right? What else? Compensation is supposed to be the one organization in HR or one function in HR which is number driven. Okay, so you have already decided you are never going to get into CNB. Good. That any day which you spend here, at least it should lead to one what I'm going to do and what I'm not going to do, right? So now that was on a lighter note. But CNB is one of the functions which is heavily dependent on the data and analysis, right? And this is one of the functions when people ask me where should I get started, and I do not know the answer that where exactly the data maturity of that organization. The blind spot, and I can say I can shoot in dark and still I will be able to make it to the bullseye. Go use CNB, because I know for sure that that is one of the functions they would have data. Without data they can't survive, right? So CNB is one of the places where a lot of data is sitting, good quality data would be complete. So all those things which you can think from the data issue perspective, CNB data would not be having. The only challenge you may get into that one is the data would be really in the diverse systems. How do you really bring it together to really make sense out of it? Would be one of the challenges which you may face. But CNB is the right place to get started if you are starting your journey with the people analytics. Yeah, your voice is good, but I don't think it is reaching till this place.
So on the CNB side, I would say because what I wanted to say is like we do not have that sort of an exposure to CNB like at the very initially start of our career, right? So at least I didn't had that. Secondly, on the CNB space, a lot of the work is now being outsourced. Like when I was with Fidelity, the complete CNB activities
So
were
can I
being
pause you
outsourced
here?
through
So
Aon.
when you say, you also mentioned about outsourcing.
Yes.
So from CNB point of view, when you outsource, what does that mean? What activities are getting outsourced? Can you help me with that?
So
Exactly.
yes,
What about you?
I think the payroll, the payroll
Processing,
process is
right?
all
So
outsourced. Yes.
CNB analytics is not about back. If you think about it, it is all about, let's say if I give you a problem statement, you should be able to think about what should be the staff cost overall for the organization. What is the optimal number, right? How exactly your staff cost should be distributed by the R&D cost, right? Not only that, who should be really be rewarded how much, right? How do you really link it up with the individual performance which is delivering the, let's say, sales or the business outcome. So when I'm talking about CNB analytics, I'm referring to that portion of the work. I do not care about who is processing the output, that this person should be receiving salary on 25th of every month, or in case if there is an issue with my pay slip, where exactly I go and raise my concern, right? So that's the differentiation between what two of you said.
Yes.
As far as I understand, most of the work which is getting outsourced in the compensation and benefit area is mostly the ops bit of it.
Yes.
But the decision making, which is the cream, where you should be really be targeting to, is still a lot of analytics can be applied. So focus from that perspective rather than looking at processing part. Okay, cool. Next one is the next one is today.
Next one is today.
Perfect. Okay, so let's start the day. Yes. You're supposed to be helping me answer the question, not asking question. Oh, okay. Okay. Good question. We'll get into that. Actually, that really, good segue into my topic now. Okay. Now, what we are going to do is, so far we really covered that, what other things have been done in last, 5 weeks. Okay. Today, we will be spending our day really, bringing all these knowledge together, and we will try to really head towards looking into employee engagement, performance management, learning, and really, come out with, possibly by end of the day, I should be able to make you think about some of the good capstone projects. Okay. I would not make you really go and do a lot of hands-on stuff. I'm going to keep that away, because we will get back to hands-on when you start working on your capstone. Okay. So from now onwards, we are going to really have a conversation, discussion, and I'm going to make you speak. Okay, and wherever needed, because I don't have much content today, to be very honest with you. I have cut down all my content. I told Shinu, yesterday I had a conversation and I have removed. I do have total maybe 33 slides. Right? So whole day is all about conversation. Okay, so we are going to talk. Okay? Because by end of the day, I should be able to get you with some good capstone projects which you should be able to pick up and do it. My criteria remains same. If someone is picking me as a mentor for the project, the person has to write a paper. Right? If you are not really intending to write a paper, then you have to excuse me. We'll do that. Okay. Now let's step into today's agenda. Then you have been reading a lot about whatever we call it, HR analytics, people analytics, workforce analytics, human capital analytics. I will run out of my breath, but still the names will go long way. Right? What comes to your mind? What kind of problem statement you have read so far where you said, wow, this is the fantastic, project, whatever I call it, doesn't matter, is something, everybody should be doing, or I should be doing. Any project, doesn't matter which organization, not your organization, across the world. And I would like everybody to speak now. It's not going to be just table-wise discussion. Okay? So please start thinking from now onwards. So as of now, we are stepping away from our current zone. How much data I do have, how much I don't have, no. You define what is best project you have ever read onto internet. You might have heard about Google, Facebook, Apple, any other company who have been doing, what is the best project which you have thought about or you have read about? So let me take your excitement away from you, and I should say that now we do have auto machine learning. We call it auto ML, right? You don't need to even think about which model. You take your data, push it to auto ML. Auto ML will decide what to really fit into, what exactly the interactions are, what exactly the output is, right? So the whole intent is that the future is more towards really getting into machine learning. Well, machine would start really finding a pattern in your data, not really thinking about why should you be thinking. Let me ask you this: that which regression you should be applying. Exactly, you are limited with your own knowledge about what are the different techniques which is available, right? Forget about it. Available is very open-ended. How many of them I am aware about it? So I'm going to really look into from that perspective. And that's the benefit auto ML gives, that because there if you really step in, it would really look into the data, and certainly the data volume has to really larger here, and figure it out which model to really apply and what should be the impact. So the future is more heading towards that, and that's the reason the impact is more in understanding the outcome, output, and the log, and the coefficient, and the factors, and optimizing those things rather than really thinking about okay, which are the ones. But yes, we should be knowing which are the different techniques which are available for us. Okay, so I'm looking at here problem statement, not the techniques. When I'm asking this question from each one of you, I'm looking for a problem statement just to help you. Okay, you might have heard about Google's Project Oxygen, right? So that's the hint to you. Now you think about any such projects which you might have heard in the industry, doesn't matter whoever has it. Can I interrupt you? Sorry. When we are talking about this, see, our capstone projects are going to come from these conversations. So your job is when the person is speaking, rest of the people keep thinking, hey, what I take out from those conversations and apply it in my company or the data or wherever you are operating. Okay, so please keep listening, keep thinking that. Sorry. So think about it. Very classic example, isn't it? And very simple example. As a HR, we need to really take some decision when people reach out to us, right? Can you really do this? And we want to be very employee-centric organization, but could there be a science behind it while taking that decision? Can I really promote that as one of the benefits to my employees, saying that, hey, at some point of time, if you are in need of funds, you can reach out to me rather than really going to the bank and applying for a loan. Think about it. This could be a very good retention tool, right? but you cannot just expose your business because you need to recover that money back as well, right? And this could be one of the ways to really think about it, that who are the people who can be really visible. So very simple problem statement linked to the business outcome, right? Because at the end of the day, you are really, engaging your employees and giving them, advanced salary, right? Enabling them to really meet some of the requirements which they may be having onto their personal side. Good. Thank you. That is a good example. Anything else? I'm going to go to everybody, so please. Yeah, so basically I get the question. Your question is more, you have been curious to know that, how exactly to really go about doing it. We'll come to that later, but as of now, I want you to really talk about a project which really excites you. I mean, which you felt that, hey, this is something, super project someone has done. We'll come to that. We'll park that as a question for the later stage. But I'm looking at here just in a problem statement like what she quickly defined. Yes, please.
So something that, of course, Project Axism has been very big inspiration. But of late, I came across this Swiggy, what Girish Menon had talked about, and how they have really looked at the data to see when the riders are going to quit, because that is a real impact. Now we are talking about HR problem, but then eventually translates into a business solution, because without riders, Swiggy just can't exist. They were predicting when the rider is going to quit because they have heavy attrition. It's a classic attrition problem, or a cliched one. But the way they have done it, and then the engagement force that once they predicted that this rider is going to quit because he has done X number of deliveries or he has written X number of kilometers. So I felt that it's a classic HR problem addressing a business.
Yeah.
So
And can you help us understand a little more that how exactly they were connecting that with the business outcome? Was there any kind of mention that, hey, if my attrition goes from, let's say, 3% to 5%, my customer satisfaction comes down by X value or whatever? Was there any such kind of mention? So I know Girish personally.
yeah.
We have shared the panel.
I was there.
Oh, you were there, right? So I think he did mention about
Yeah.
this in that particular conversation.
I don't remember exactly the numbers, but then from what I realized was their training models, based on this, or the kind of induction that they're gonna do for the employees, because they're gonna drive certain number of kilometers in a day. So what kind of programs that they need to have.
So basically here, the point which I wanted to really drive is, though it was about the attrition of a delivery boy, that simple attrition could be really building to the business output, right? Business like Swiggy, what really makes them survive into this competitive environment? If you have promised, the day you place, or the time you place the order, doesn't matter if it's Domino's or anybody, the one thing you ask the question every time is,
time.
कितने बजे तक deliver करोगे? Right? And your clock starts ticking there. And think about the impact to the customer satisfaction if they keep missing that time. Right? So simple thing like if they really run down onto delivery boys, it will impact their business outcome, isn't it? So thanks for sharing that one. Any other projects? There are many. If you're not sharing, you are not reading. I will be very ruthless saying this. Which is good. I mean, good to know this, right? Most of us, we believe that, attrition can be capped by just paying more. And Yeah, so that's the question. You want to do that. What I want to really learn from you is, have you come across any project where it was really a wow project related to people analytics? Doesn't matter who it is. No, we'll come to that. We'll come to that. All your capstone. We are driving towards capstone. My agenda is today is very clear. Shinu is going to throw me out of this room because I am deviating from the lesson plan which submitted to her, but that's fine. I'll speak to Shinu later. So that's what we are going to achieve, by end of the day, hopefully. Yeah. If we keep talking, everybody in this room. Yes. Any other project?
So I have something to say, but it is not related more to the human resources side.
Doesn't
But
matter.
okay, that's fine then. So last week I was just coming through a documentary on Vladimir Putin, right? So the intent here was like the interviewer who was taking the interview of Vladimir Putin. It was like basically with regards to how public opinion it actually impacted American elections. There was a large sway wherein like people were expecting that Hillary Clinton would be coming in as the next president of United States of America and completely been outthrown by Donald Trump. The background of the story here is the reality was, as on today, Russian gross domestic product, or let's say like the investment into the warfare or into the arms, right? It's 1/10 of the Americans GDP, right? So head on, they cannot go with America. They cannot like overpower or overthrow America in a way. But like they like Vladimir Putin and his own like people like who are completely into the scientific arena on the AI and the machine learning, everything which was been inclusive of like when we talk about with respect to how the public opinion mattered. So that was like what the interviewers were trying to say, that is you had a direct impact on like keeping Donald Trump as a next president and just overthrowing the lady from here. And how did public opinion mattered like in this scenario? Because it was completely a different ballgame. It was completely completely a different war zone altogether. So what they were talking about is it is not only for like when you have a war like wherein like you engage with arsenal, you engage with nuke forces and others, but it has more to also do with like on the public opinion side, or how to vilify the public image of a certain country or a certain figure or a certain like a delegate, like a president, right, of a nation. And the entire American election was being completely driven away by the public opinion, what the Russians gave with respect to Donald Trump, and didn't go the same way with.
So you started saying this particular example. Thanks for sharing it, because
Yeah.
I personally believe that this is pure application of how any employees, human sentiment really works.
Right.
Right. And it could be really be taken into the corporate setup as well. What do you believe? Let me ask you this question. If I give you a JD, okay, and you read through a job description, do you think the kind of text which is written on the JD, and JDs are very beautifully written most of the time, right? Which is not true. I wanted someone to say that. Thanks for saying it. But at least more from the language point of view, always we try to sell it because it's our sales pitch. Doesn't matter in reality after hire what that guy does, who cares, right? But the JD is written that way. If I give you a JD, do you think a JD can motivate, demotivate gender as well to apply for that position?
Yes, if it is there with respect to working in night shifts, then definitely male employees would be one.
JD only. Forget about timing. Forget about all those things. Forget about compensation. I'm talking about the job role, the way the text is written, the tone which is written.
Okay.
Answer is yes. 3 years back, there is a company by name TO. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Right? You should look into that company. They offer only one product. What they do is you just copy paste your JD there, and they will tell you whether what kind of tone you have used in your JD, whether the tone or the text which you have used is too much dominated towards a particular gender or particular religion, anything. And this could not be a conscious bias, it could be unconscious bias, right? Because as an organization, none of us really want to write something which is favorable to only one gender or one community or something, right? And they have really gone putting a machine learning behind it. You copy paste and you really get to see how exactly your JD should be really written, right? Using each and every text behind it. So the whole idea is, I'm just picking it up from what you shared, is even the text, if the text can really motivate someone to take a decision or not, right? When you are talking in front of a people, the kind of like facial expression you do have, the body language, the kind of pitch you are using, the modulation, everything really impacts, because that's what really connects two people, right? Let's say if you are part of your CEO is addressing the whole employee base, right? And if the energy level is always like completely down, it's more like one of the TV ad which you might have seen, which says मैं तो परेशान रहता था, मुझे कुछ नहीं समझ में आता था. You have seen that ad, right? So if that kind of, let's say the tone and the pitch and the modulation, if CEO is talking, do you think he or she would be able to motivate employees, especially during those situations when market is, let's say, going down? Answer is no, right? Because people buy in onto people, what they say, what they commit, and those. So again, a lot of visual analytics can be done, a lot of video analytics can be done to really apply and understand what kind of emotion and sentiment individual is going through. And this is really getting applied today by HR while recruiting individuals, right? A lot of us are really moving away from face-to-face interviews. We are getting into video interviews, and when you're in front of the video, basically I can read your facial expressions, how exactly your face, every muscle is really moving, and I can really map it with what different data which I have had in past, and really in fact going to the extent possible of really finding your traits and behavior, how exactly you may behave in different situations. Because when questions are thrown to you, what happens if you are not a very good actor, right? It comes on your face, right? And it can be captured. Easily it can be captured, it could be translated into a data, and the data can really talk about it, whether you are under stress while answering that question or not. So I just took it his example, but I wanted to tell you that it is getting applied today within HR, right? Again, how exactly you apply technique, I'm not really getting into it, but there is an application which HR can today drive it, and it saves a lot of time and effort for the company. Okay? Any other project? Thank you. Not you.
Okay.
Not you. Someone else, because I want to really go around the table. Any project from this table? Hmm. Yeah. So I will call it diversity and inclusion for you, and possibly this table already does have a capstone project, right? So I'll come back to you after a couple of slides once we are done with here, because yeah. So Yeah. Correct. So I will stop you here because you will take away my future slides. So I don't want that to happen. Because I would really be pushing you to help us understand why it is important for you, right? If you are really going for diversity and inclusion, not only for gender and beyond that, what does it mean for the business? Why your CEO should be caring about it? We'll talk about it, after some time, and I would be very happy if we can really pick it up that as one of the capstone project because diversity and especially gender diversity is one of the pain area today in the industry. Doesn't matter which geography, which country you belong to. Sure, we'll talk about it because ultimately, my drive here is not that whether it is important or not important. How do you go about solving? Everybody is saying it is a problem, right? But nobody is talking about how exactly it can be solved and can analytics be really be utilized to really come out with some recommendation which can be implemented. Sure. So if no if you want so So Kunal, only thing I can tell you is in Hindi there is a शायरी, right? On a lighter note. अब बदनाम हुए तो क्या हुआ नाम नहीं होगा, right? So जो होगा देखा जाएगा. Wow, wow, fantastic success story, right? I think the issue, what usually happens in these cases, that decision maker is who? The hiring manager. And what hiring manager does is they hire for their role, right? While the shift should be, am I hiring this candidate for the organization or not? If a candidate fits into the organization, the lens really completely changes what you just said, because I'm not hiring someone only for doing a role. A role may exist only for a year or maybe 18 months or 24 months, right? Talent mobility is one of the questions which every hiring manager should be really be thinking about. Whether the talent is really able to learn new things which is coming in the market, is mobile or not, right? These things are the thing which should be really be considering. So thanks for sharing that one. And I think we do have a lot of potential into that space when we talk about, even though if I very much narrow it down and talking about gender diversity, is still very uncharted area from people analytics point of view. What we have been doing most of the time is only listing down the percentages, right? And maximum going and comparing that benchmarking that internally and externally, saying that okay, if I am a bank, okay, what is the percentage for another bank, right? But the intent should not be that. Everybody knows there is a problem, right? The problem should, I mean, the intent should be that okay, what recommendation, what solutions we can bring it together so that the number should start changing, right? So we'll talk about that. So diversity and inclusion is one very interesting topic. Possibly we should be able to looking at doing at least one capstone project in this area. And I can tell you it does have a very good potential if you want to really hit upon onto the gender diversity. Another thing which has happened in UK right now is gender pay gap, right? Everybody reported numbers. Numbers are really going, I mean, very much expected. The reason is it's just a math behind it, right? The numbers which is reported here is they have taken the average and they have reported the number. Now, if you think about it, the maximum salary where it goes, top of the pyramid, and the top of the pyramid, your gender diversity is very less, right? So average is going to go down, right? So, I mean, whether we can debate a lot about it, whether that's a right metric or not, but certainly it is a right way to start when we did not have anything. But people should be not be looking at gender pay gap. They should be looking at equal pay Equal pay is all about really looking at by job profile. So let's say if you and you both are sitting and doing the same kind of job, same role, whether both of you are paid at the same salary level or not. That's the way we should be really be looking at. But yes, that's a very potential area where pay gap comes later, but before that even the percentages are not very healthy. Yep. Any other project? Mm-hmm. Have you come across any project like this with someone has done it? So employee engagement, you have done the survey, and this is which one? Pulse survey, annual survey, regular survey. Okay. And then you arrive to a score, and then after you also looked into the text behind it, you mind that particular text, and yeah. What did you do after that? All these things are done. What did you do after that? What did Manoj did? Manoj doesn't do anything most of the time. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, you recommended, but what did Manoj do? Exactly, and we'll talk about this because most of us we stop it right there, right? We do all these surveys, we really come out with a recommendation as well, and then what happens after that, right? And that's where some of the things we will talk about it, how exactly we can really leverage the scores and the text which is coming out of employee engagement surveys, not only just to pass on to the recommendation to someone, but can be utilized for any other analysis. Okay. Okay, let me stop here and we'll keep chatting about the different projects because that's where we are going to generate our capstone projects. I listed down a couple of projects which are very much research oriented projects. This is taken from Google, and some of the text here. But what I wanted to highlight is some of the things which you will read here. You will feel that is it something can be done using analytics or not, and that's the thought process I wanted to start. Why we struggle with the capstone project most of the time, because when we really think about a problem statement, we are not able to quantify and translate that into the data problem. I think someone today, I think you mentioned, right, converting that into a data problem is the main thing. If we are able to unbundle it, convert it into a data problem, I think the problem is solved. And day one, if you remember, when I spoke about the case study which I presented, it was all about unbundling or deconstructing the problem statement into a data problem. Right? It started with promising, promise from the CEO to the shareholders of 5 billion. How do HR really contribute to the whole story? Right? We went about really deconstructing that statement further and converting into a HR problem and further converting into a data problem, and then we could really see how exactly science can be utilized to deliver the output. Make sense? So some of the the projects which I would like to really talk about here is, let's say, it's too small for me also to read, and with age, my this close eyesight is really going for a toss. Okay, so you might have heard already about Project Oxygen, right? So we're not going to touch upon that one. However, let's say checking for pay equity, we spoke about that. Optimizing the mix of compensation. How do you go about really, let's say, looking into the mix of different benefits which you are offering to your employees, right? Most of the time there are two components, fixed and variable pay. How do you really come out with a blended approach which is really works in favor of the employees, right? Can science be used? Answer is yes. Let's say another thing is ensuring fair promotions, right? This is very debatable topic and very subjective topic. Doesn't matter whatever you do, people who get promoted, they will always take your engagement survey saying that promotion process is very fair, and people who did not get promoted, they will always say that it was not fair, right? How do you really go about deconstructing these subjective problems which possibly human will really look at from a different angle on the basis of the experiences they have gone through, right? Is it doable? Answer is doable, right? Let's say limiting the number of candidate interviews. Most of the time, what we get hassled is, even if I have to fill up one position, how many, in the first round, how many resumes you get it from your recruiter? 40 to 60? Any other number? Yeah, on an average, still 20, 200. I was waiting for some number to go beyond 100 times 200, because it is completely, some of the recruiters, they feel that my success ratio goes up if I give you more volume of the resumes. But think about it, it's all about the conversion, right? Not only that, how do you really arrive to a profile where not only looking at let's say 60 to 100 profiles, but I look into only 5 and still I would be able to convert to one, right? Think about it. Another project which is done by Google is where they looked into it, that how many interviews should be really be done, how many rounds of interviews, right? They have found that beyond 4 it does not add any value, right? Think about your own organization. Do you have setup where there is a conscious decision taken by the head of HR saying that none of the role in this organization would go through more than 4 rounds of interviews? Round of interviews. And Google does it one-on-one. Okay, so they do it one-on-one basis, meaning it's not a panel discussion with people, right? Another thing they do it is when they really go interviewing someone, everything which is being discussed, they document it. And what they do is, by doing it, they are generating a lot of data which can really be used upon to really see how exactly the decision was taken. Not only that, so let's say 4 people, they have been interviewing on one-on-one basis. All 4 then they come together, and together they take a decision whether this person is fit for the organization or not. Yes, for the role too, but that's not only the criteria. Okay, hiring manager is just one of the panel member there, but not the decision maker. So there are many. Why I wanted to really drive this conversation here is, most of the time when we think about project and in people analytics, the biggest challenge which all of us have been facing. Okay, we understand it is important, but where is the project? How do I get started? Right, that's the challenge most of us have been facing. And the whole idea is that what you see day-to-day basis in your organization is mostly, if you remember the 4 quadrant as we saw last time, the projects which will be coming to you would be a project related to HR operational or maybe business operational. These are the 2 quadrant most of the projects will be originating. Is there a way you can start thinking about the projects which are very, very researched, where you may not really think through a data which is available today? If needed, you will create focus group to derive the data. You may create surveys to really derive the data. Because think about it, all these different projects which I have listed here, it may not have a straightforward data available into your HRMS system, right? How do you really remove number of round of interviews, or if there is an unconscious bias, how do you figure it out? This is more of a focus group discussion. This is more of a data which you can generate when you pick up the project. So the myth which I wanted to bust here was that when you are thinking about your project, first of all, don't think about data to start. Because if you're just thinking about data first, you are limiting your thinking, right? And then list it down, the different problem statement, and then think, okay, where exactly, how you will be producing the data, right? And then you go and say that, hey, look like this is a good project, and the data also can be produced using these methodologies. Okay, fair enough? Any questions so far? Yes. Can you use the mic?
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
See, in other areas like apart from HR analytics, so the problem statements are like much more like known to the people, and they know from where they have to collect the data and everything, and they are addressing the solutions for the problem. But when it comes to HR, for example, if we pick up any problem statement, what we have mentioned, if we kickstart it, like to collect the data itself, or to organize to some extent, it will take 2 months. And after 2 months, there are fair chances that we could realize, no, we cannot achieve it. And during that particular time, like, companies are not actually supporting us. because you told like it is a new problem. Okay, we will support you to start on, but like it's completely a new playground where people are starting, and we can't see where could be the endpoint for that. Whether it will take 3 months or 6 months, and people are not supporting.
So I'll put it this way, as an analytics person, right? I'm not a hardcore analytics person. I'm more of a translator, to be very honest and truthful with all of you. We have, how should I put it? Because this is little, I'm going to really degrade analytics here. We get excited too much creating POCs, proof of concept.
Yes.
And what happens, the damage which can happen with proof of concept is you may pick it up a problem statement which possibly is not a pain area for your organization. I'll give you a classic example. Let's say if Kunal goes and picks up a problem statement which is not related to diversity, he would certainly struggle more to convince to the management, right, why they should be really be looking into this area. Today, management wants to look into diversity, right? Why don't we really go about creating a proof of concept there, rather than really, chartering into area which is not a pain area for the CEO.
No, here we are hitting the right area. For example, like Kunal has given this problem statement.
So I'll come to that. Let's say now you have been able to pinpoint onto the pain area which is important for your organization.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Now you go, okay, these are the ways we can collect the data.
Yes.
Now what happens here is most of the time the data collection methodology should be really be thought through very beautifully. It should not be really be, okay, I'll go and collect any data and later on I will think how to use the data.
Okay.
We go wrong there. So
Okay.
you know your intent of the project. Keeping the intent in the mind, you should really be defining your data collection processes.
Okay.
If you are clear about the problem statement, work backward to define the data collection process so that when the data is generated, you should be able to really perform the analysis which you're performing. So in your mind, in a way, you have already performed the whole analysis before even the data collection process has started.
But what if in between, like I failed in collecting the data?
Yep.
Then what should I answer to Kunal that time?
So if you fail, what are the reasons for failing collecting the data?
Because of data unavailability, which
Data unavailability where?
in the system, like for what the
Exactly. The
organization.
point which I'm trying to drive here is then again we are looking at here only capitalizing the data which is available in the system. Right? If the data is not there, could there be a possibility that you can generate data? Now, there is a pros and cons to generating data as well. If you are working on a project that needs to be keep running, right, on an interval, you cannot keep generating data. You cannot keep running focus group. If it is one of the project like Project Oxygen or something, you are okay to really do a focus group and run a survey and those things, right? So it is a trade-off which you need to think about it, that whether it is a one-time project which you are doing to drive some strategic conversation and take some decision on it, or it is something which will become a routine. Because if it is going to become a routine, you cannot keep doing the focus group time and again, right? You can do plan, do act, check, that is fine, but you cannot keep generating this data. It has to become the part of the mainstream where the data is generating automatically if your project is supposed to be a repeat project.
But during that process, that turnaround time is getting affected very badly. Then how should we answer business?
It should. And that's where the sponsorship really plays an important role. That it should not be seen as one of the initiative. It should really be seen that, hey, head of the function has really signed up and this project needs to be delivered, because everybody is accountable for it. And when you are running that project, do not run as a HR project, right? And that's where collaboration comes into picture. Please ensure that you are joining up with the business lines, because who is the beneficiary? It's not HR. To me, HR is a facilitator, right? So if HR is a facilitator, HR should be just facilitating, should not be really be bothered about that. Business person should be ensuring that whoever is supposed to be part of that focus group, they are presented, and they are in the room, and they are really providing that value. So this is a joined up approach. It's not a very plain vanilla thing which I can say that these are the prescriptions, but it is purely, I would say, a sponsorship from the business and the HR joining hands together to really drive it. But if we go wrong into asking question and generating that data, it's our fault. And that's where my push is that you need to think through that what data you are generating, what questions you are asking, and you need to have a plan in advance that how exactly you are going to consume that data. Okay, I know I haven't given you very straight vanilla answer to you, but this is the situation we are in, because collecting data is never ever easy.
Even business know that is not easy, but still like they want to impress the above people, so they are also putting some pressure towards us, like to get it done. So it is,
If I can just answer that, because I've been in analytics for quite some time.
We can't hear you.
Okay, is it audible now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if I could answer that, because I've been in analytics for quite some time, I think we have a fetish for wow stories or a large scale projects, and what we often forget is that a small success stories is what is gonna give long mileage for you, and you don't create the small success stories. You keep shooting in the dark of talking about diversity or big attrition problems. The basic work, even if we even before identifying the problem statement, is that do we have the data? If you don't have 100 columns, even if you have 5 columns, let's be sure about that. And if you are sure about those 5 columns, then you go to the problem. I know that everyone keeps emphasizing about you need to have a business problem and all that, but then before that, do you have a data for that? I think that's the first check that I do, and before getting a fancy problem statement.
Yeah, so it's a chicken and egg. That's where you are heading towards. Now the problem is that if I do not have a data,
yeah. Now what's your
Right.
approach?
then how? I mean, our intent should be that I cannot just get limited the day the data comes to me.
Then
I
you
will start
work.
solving problems, right?
Yeah.
So we have to figure it out. Okay,
There is
if
a
that
trade-off,
the
yeah.
situation. How should we go? There are different tools which is available, right? Which can be used to generate data, right? The focus group is the fantastic idea, right? Survey is another idea of really generating data, because all the time you are not going to have data readily available in your organization, because your problem statement may change,
Yes.
right? The way the industry is changing, leading to the organization to take a different shape and size, your problem statement will change, and you may not really have that data captured in your HRMS system from day one, right? So my suggestion would be that if the data is missing, right, you need to think through it how exactly you can generate the data. Another way to really look at, and this is to just supplement what data you might have collected. Most of the time, let's say data is missing, you have gone generated a tool and build a tool and generated the data using survey or whatever it is. You should also look at outside your organization if such kind of a data exists. You may not really bring that into your analysis, but you can use that information as a supporting facts that okay, why what I have done is right, or maybe directionally right? So when you do not have a data or reality available to you to really present it to your organization, you need to rely on to all these supporting facts to make your business case. It's not easy. It's not a straightforward. It takes a lot of pain to really do that, but there is no other way also to go about it. Okay.
One more
Let's-
doubt. Yes, okay.
Sorry.
Shall I ask one more question?
Yes, you can.
When
And
like,
the question is not to me. Question to the whole class.
yeah, sometimes like what we generally do, we predict the attrition rate something, and we say like for the next quarter this could be the expected attrition and everything. Even when I worked in one of the organizations, like I picked this attrition problem statement, and I worked for timeline was given only for 3 months, but I very relaxedly I took 6 months because of data inavailability and making the data format ready and all. After results given, the attrition percentage whatever I have given, it is not true. Like I quoted around 3%, but it was only 1.5%. Then as usual, like HR came and asked me like, funny you quoted 3%, but I could see only 1.5%. Then it's like I have done half 50% more over
Yeah.
there, right?
So we got our problem. Now, what do you think? What went wrong here?
I already figured out that thing also.
Okay.
But since most of the people are leaving, they added that variable component to their fixed component. Generally, like 10% is the variable pay, right? Generally, we all have in any of the service or any of the industry sometimes. What
No,
they did is,
so let me pause.
No, I-
You figured it out, but
Yes.
what went wrong? Why did you figure it out after making 60% of your journey?
because they did the organization changes, policies they revised very recently.
I understand,
Yes.
but was there a way you could have find this much ahead in the game?
That they will not disclose us, right? Because I was using historical data to predict the attrition. But when I am about to deliver the project, they have changed the
It drives
policies of the
to-
company.
I mean, from my perspective, it drives to only one point: joined up approach.
But business will not tell those things to us.
Why?
Right?
It is not HR project. It has to be done in collaboration with the business. That's the point I want to drive here. It means we did not really go, I'm sorry, I'm going to challenge you, that we did not really ask all the question in the beginning of the project. We did not possibly, we did the exploratory analysis looking at the data. We should have asked all the question right there as soon as you completed the exploratory analysis, that hey, this is what I'm seeing. even though there was no gap from your perspective, just validating. Okay, this number sounds or smell right to you. We say it a smell check, right? Make business, keep validating things in between. Not only that, do not make business wait till you do have your final output ready or you are 60% of the project done. Join up, collaborate from the beginning, have a regular catch up with them to ensure these kind of surprises are avoided. Otherwise,
they are telling it is surprise to them also because that came from UK to India, so the changes happen so suddenly.
this could be a very specific case, but I'm taking your example, but we have seen that this kind of things happens, and most of the time this is not. This is purely because the people did not really collaborate in the beginning, and the business stakeholders has been kept in dark, not really been told that what exactly analytics team is doing, because analytics team feels that hey, I know everything, and this is the biggest damage we do it to ourselves, right? And we start really going to the extent where we start telling business how to run the business. No, this is not here, someone coming and showing, I'm good at this. It is all about joining together to utilize the functional business and technical knowledge to solve a problem. Okay, let me move to the next one. I'll just
off track. Is there a need of changing the model very often? Because as an actuarial, they keep changing the models every 6 months or every 1 year, and they do it as a normal exercise. Why should they do it? I was just wondering when he said that it did not work. Of course, they could have taken.
when you say model, what does it mean?
Whatever the model they're kind of applying.
So you're talking about here the statistical models which has been built, right? Would you like to answer that
Yes,
question?
There is definitely a
model
need.
monitoring setup we call. Every 6 months or as per your company needs, you need to rerun the model because always the dynamics of the organization changes. The policies of the company keep on changes. So since we are using historical data and we are basically coming up with results, right? If whatever the recent changes also, those things also, if you need to incorporate in your data, you need to keep on rerunning the model.
And
There is a
also-
separate team called model monitoring setup. So they keep doing that.
Model validation. They do only re-looking at this particular model.
Yes, because industry is changing, so fast that you want to really see, if still that model is best to use in current situation or not, right? You wanted to add
Yeah.
something?
So, and also when you look at of course, the social factors are there, but when you look at a simple decision tree, if the branches are formed at, let us say, an experience of 5.5 years, now the moment that you applied, there are more number of people at 5.3 years. Okay. So you're not gonna use the same model 6 months down the line,
Yeah.
right? Because they are at 5.9, the patterns are gonna be different.
Yes.
So when we read the data, that will also give us an indication of when exactly you have to refresh the model.
Okay. So here is another, business case where, this is a McKinsey case. The whole idea was that in one of the restaurants, they wanted to really check how exactly they can elevate customer satisfaction index. Now, in a restaurant setup, customer satisfaction is a lot. It's a hospitality business, right? So a lot to we deal with the people who really come and interact with the customers directly on day-to-day basis. Now, if you really look at, if you are given this particular problem as a usual HR folks, what we would do, how exactly we will go and deconstruct it? No, don't read it. I'm waiting for your input. How exactly you will go and deconstruct it? So if business comes to you and they say that we want to really elevate the customer satisfaction index, right? How exactly you would go about really contributing to this whole problem statement?
Who are the customers?
Who are the customers? Okay,
What's
fine.
their likes and dislikes? What is that story that those kind of parameters are input? And to map that, we will see who are the people who are servicing them and what kind of services are being given.
So what time we break for lunch? 1:15 to 1:30. I think that's better. Range works always better. Absolute number it is, yes. Okay, so again, this is a recap, right? Last time we spoke about it, so I'm not going to spend time on this one. Basically, if you really look at, why did I put that particular slide is, if you think about, 1.0 and 2.0 together, mostly, what kind of data they have been using. They have been using observation, experiments, thoughts, feelings, and perception, which is not usually the data which we really think when we think about the data, right? A a lot of the data which is very much sentimental in nature. Kind of problem they have been really been solving is all related to employee sentiments, leadership, network, and so on. When you talk it to a product, that's what really they talk about behavioral and intention driven products. If you see a lot of these kind of products would be operating into this particular space or possibly into this particular space. So I just wanted to call it out just from our conversations point of view. Now here is the tool and framework which I wanted to talk about. That you remember we said that okay, I know HR problem or a problem statement, right? But the biggest struggle which we do have today is how do I connect that with the business outcome, right? Do you think why we struggle with this? What do you think? Why we are struggling connecting our HR problems to business outcome? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So we are going to a step back. Solution comes when we have identified the problem, right? And then after we talk about short-term solution, long-term solution, and those. One thing you would notice is if you focus onto this fourth quadrant, right? Who speaks this language? Or possibly most of the time, it would be CEOs who would be making such promises to their investors, right? What we are talking about merger and acquisition. We are talking about, let's say, divestment. We are talking about cost reduction, right? The case which I presented last time was nothing but it was more around really becoming a leaner bank, right? Which translates into the cost reduction of 5 billion, right? So one of the things which we do most of the time is when we think about a problem statement, one, we start thinking about the data which we do have that drives our problem statement, right? Two, we start with where I'm sitting, right? That is HR. And everything goes for a toss there, right there. Because I have now started thinking from HR point of view, what is the problem, right? Think about it. How many of us we really go and read annual report which gets published by our organization every year, or the quarterly result which they announce? What do you think? As a HR, you should be reading about it? Should be. I think that's the answer. Should be. Meaning we don't most of the time, right? I don't want to generalize it, but if you really speak to people and if we become honest to ourselves, we do not. Now, if I do not really read those papers, I do not read, or log into the town halls, or I do not read the employee communication which comes from the top of the pyramid, how am I going to really understand if any of such things which is going to happen or not happen? Now, in absence of that knowledge, I'm bound to really limit my thinking to only the problems which I'm seeing and reading every day. That is nothing but HR. Because that's where I'm operating, that's where I'm interacting, that's where I'm listening every day, right? So that's the challenge with us, the way we operate today. Now, next two slides, I'm going to talk about a framework. If you start really applying that one, confident that you would start to really step out of HR problems and start to really think more around this. Okay, and this framework will enable you to connect this with HR problem, that how exactly HR can help driving the agenda which CEO is mentioning to the investors, or possibly putting a strategic agenda for becoming a leaner organization, or possibly growth engine identified into a different geography and so on. Okay, and what we would be doing is, after this 2 slides, once you get settled with the concept, each one of us will take out our pen and pencil, notebook and pen, and think through what your CEO or your functional head or business head might have spoken, the strategy for 2018, and then we will use the framework to arrive to the HR problem. Okay? We will take time doing this one because this is not going to be easy for us, but this would really translate or help you possibly arriving to the capstone project which you may be able to convince your business. Because I'm not really picking up any problem statement which is not part of your organization. I'm making you think, if possible, something which your business is targeting for 2018. Okay? So just I'm setting the expectation for next 1 hour and beyond. Okay, what is business outcome? What is business outcome? Revenue, yes, is there. More clients, okay. More clients, more revenue. Okay. Return on investment. What else? Well-being. Healthier organization. Global reach network. What does it mean? What does it? It translates to what? It translates to what? More customer, right? More revenue. What else? Long-term business plans, and we call it future value, right? You are investing into something today which may not give you benefit today, but maybe down the line, 3 years. Reliance, they are known for it. When I'll close this one and then I'll come to you. So Reliance, you might have noticed one thing, and if you know someone in Reliance, you are working with them. So I'm going to make a statement and you're going to validate if it is right or not. So whenever Mukesh Ambani, when he puts into any strategy in place, he says that first 10 years I'm not going to make any money. But this investment is going to really give me revenue after 10 years. So 10 years is a kind of like he works in a 10, 30, 50, that's what I have heard. Speaking to one of the president who works very closely with Mukesh in Geo division. Like Geo is the classic used case, right? They came and they said, I'm not going to charge anything. Voice anyway, they are free. They played onto the data. And think about it, today when you make a WhatsApp call, it goes much more smoothly than your voice call. They are not playing today. They are creating a market for down the line few years, right? That's a future value they are creating. Is it true? I mean, usually that's the way they get into it. Correct, but the point is, who is the market leader? Who is really the first one to really, start it, right? If you think about it, Reliance, right? Reliance when came in, everybody started slashing down their different plans. Now they are in catch-up mode, right? Reliance is one step ahead of them. Geo, how soon they have acquired the market? Think about it, right? I'm not saying they're the biggest one. Still, the Bharti is the biggest one from the market share perspective. Vodafone Idea is the second one, Reliance is third. But think about the rate at which they have captured the market. They are not making money, they are losing money, but they are not playing for today. They are creating future value, right? What else? Capital efficiency, right? Efficiency is one of the game which most of the time we, our CEOs and the business heads would keep talking about it, right? So if you read, any business heads, their communication or the letter or the annual report, most of the conversations would be around this, right? They would be talking about the future strategy. where exactly they are going to grow, which are the kind of different skill set they may really acquire more from to create future value, to speed up the market capture, right? So if you think these are the different ways you would be able to think through the business outcomes, which most of these senior stakeholders would be looking at. Now, if this is the business outcome they are looking at, they must be having some way to measure it, right? And they call it key process drivers, key performance drivers, right? Some KPIs, let's put it KPIs. Do you think if I'm able to really, figure it out, the strategy of the organization, can I speak to few people also to ask them, hey, how are you going to measure that? Whether you are really making progress around that or not, right? They must be having some KPI because business doesn't run on gut feel. Finance would always be having some KPI around this to go back to CEO saying that are we on track for the program or not, right? So you can always speak to the business stakeholders to understand how are they going to measure that business outcome. Still, we are not talking about HR or anything. We are talking about business strategy and how are you going to measure that strategy to ensure whether we are making healthy progress or not. Are you with me? Any questions so far? You want a couple of minutes too? So do you want to speak?
So my question on the business outcome would be like outcome is a pretty high level when you talk about a company today like Dell or something where I'm currently into, or most of the people who are there today. So, but if you look upon to a outcome with respect to, let's say I meet stakeholders who are like from managers to senior directors also, like on various issues or concerns. So I just needed to understand through you with respect to like when there is a budget has been set, and sorry that if I may deviate from this, but if there is a budget which has been set for a certain business vertical, let's say for
any specific example which you may be facing without taking names and those things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just to be more precise on
right. So because I was just coming to that, so on a certain R&D side of Dell, right, today we have a certain way. We have a certain segment of managers like who actually say that okay, these are the cost. This is the budget which has been defined for this cycle or this quarter, and we have to hire some contingent workers, and this is the ratio of the contingent workers to the ratio of full timers. Why I'm coming to this hiring side is because I do interact with managers who also have concerns with respect to hiring needs and all, right? So I need to understand like when there is a budget which is being set up, right, or being allocated, right? So how does that come? Like, is it a CEO who does, because my understanding and my knowledge on that level is a bit low, if I may be honest with you. The budgeting has been defined through a certain through a CEO, or it comes through the delivery heads, or how does it managed? Because I need to understand that dynamics. And yes, finance been included in that.
This conversation, if you want to really share some of your experiences, I mean, how exactly they set up the budget, and I would add in mine as well. So the question is that usually if you really look at the pyramid, down the line we come to know, okay, this is the budget which has been allocated for a let's say driving a particular strategy XYZ. The question is that how do they really arrive to that budget allocation? Right?
Exactly, and how do they say that okay, we cannot go beyond this, or this is what we are looking for? We cannot go for a third full timer. Instead, we go for a 4 or 5 contingent workers, right? So how does that mean defined?
So the way we do our budgets is it's basically data driven. So we look at our past numbers, we look at what's the last 12 months of revenue numbers, which business unit has achieved the targets, which is close to the targets, what is the next 12 months of projections, and do we really need to invest in that business or not? So we have this discussion with the business heads. They say, okay, we're going to be growing, let's say our facility management division. We started this business about 2 years back, and they're showing exponential growth, 50% every year. So they're saying that they're going to be adding so many customers in so many regions, so many geographic regions. So we need to hire, get more headcount into this particular into the system. We require more funds. We require more budget. This is our budget from the business unit perspective. And if you give us this is the P&L that we'll give you. This is the EBIT that we'll give you. And then we have a discussion with our board, and then we say, okay, we will give this business unit. We try to operate them into silos. We don't take them as a whole group. We break them down, unbundle them into different respective business units, and then we look at the numbers basically.
So basically, if I summarize that, what Kunal is saying is, and this is directly coming from the business, and exactly this is the way it gets done, doesn't matter what of businesses we are operating. One is the component, the inputs which goes into budgeting is one is the business strategy, where exactly I'm looking into my game for next investor 3 to 5 years time, right? Then after we look at more from the promises point of view, that what kind of investment that needs to be made to really return that kind of what kind of investment needs to be made to really receive that kind of a return which we are expecting out of it. Mostly this task is done by the finance, right? Working with the business heads together, and then after it really populates down below. So that's the way they really control it. But these are very much an exercise done on the basis of, as Kunal said, historical information, as well as what is the forward-looking view they do have. It's purely strategy-driven, and numbers really gets consumed here to decide that what portion needs to be really invested. Depending on the view, sometimes they may also come back and say that, hey, possibly we may require more budget as well. If the let's say business is really growing at a much more bigger speed, and they believe that by injecting a little more budget I can speed up the rate, why not to do it? At the end of the day, it is all about the business, right? So it is more of a very, I would say, detailed analysis performed before finance comes back and tells the CEOs that this is what exactly the budget we do have. To run the programs, most of the time, if you really look at annual reports, they would always carve it out some portion of the money to run some of the strategic agendas, right? R&D is one of the things which is a kind of a black hole, right? Because nobody would be able to really translate that what exactly, or you would be able to say what exactly we are heading towards, and that's where these kind of business outcomes, especially R&D really translate into future value, right? And if you really look into the one of the KPI which I have mentioned here is nothing but innovation. So R&D really get associated to innovation, right? Now the point is that you directly spoke about hiring, right? How do I really get limited? I mean, people say that you got to get contractor because we want to get into the R&D of it. I want to challenge that when I'm talking about this particular method here, that why only hiring? If the CEO's focus is R&D, or really creating the future value, and future value is getting measured by the number of innovations which I am producing, which is the KPI for me. Let's say if you have decided that if I want to create a future value in a particular area, let's call it, just to simplify it, chatbot, right? One of my future values to really create an AI-driven chatbot where all my employees can really interact and really get their concerns answered. I'm just making it up, right? Now the point is, if that is my future value, and I see that would be really be getting utilized by most of the organizations in future, basically how many number of innovations attached to that particular outcome is something I would keep measuring on, right? With a duration of, let's say 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, whatever the timeline they really put in. To deliver that number of innovation, right? Why it is only the hiring? Can we really think about without really getting color that it is not only the hiring which is going to deliver this innovation, but more than that. If you are really driving an innovation, you are not really talking about hiring. What you are talking about is to drive that innovation, what is the workforce capability which we need to have? Isn't it? I think that's a much more better question to ask rather than directly jumping onto recruitment. Recruitment is just one of the HR processes. But let's step back from recruitment and say that if I want to really, it's not coming.
So
Is it stuck here or? Okay, so basically, let's say what we are talking about is, yeah, let's see. So what are we talking? Let's say we decided R&D as a future value as one of the strategic priority for the CEO or the business, and we are saying that we are going to measure our future value on the basis of number of patents I do or number of innovations which I am doing. Now, number of patents and number of innovations is nothing but workforce capability. Now I'm stepping into HR zone, right? But I'm still not really carving out any of the HR functions, who is really going to do and what exactly they are going to do. I'm just saying that to drive innovations and to drive number of patents, my workforce capability should be looked upon. Now I should be able to really connect that back, that if I need to drive more number of patents or innovations, which are the workforce capability is really applicable for it. Some of the listing which is done here: employee engagement, workforce performance, human capital efficiency, leadership capability, talent management, workforce adaptability, ability, and culture. Now, if my API is to drive more number of patents or innovations, what do you think? Which are the workforce capabilities are must to have? Whatever I just read. Should I read it again? Leadership capability. What else? Human capital. Adaptability. Yeah, think about it. Now you are speaking. Adaptability to change. Okay? Go on, go on. Exactly. That's the point. Now go about must to have versus nice to have. It is very easy for us to say that, hey, everything is applicable, right? But just think through it, and you would be able to arrive to at least 2 to 3 workforce capabilities which would be linked to the KPI for which we are really thinking through how exactly HR should be able to help CEO drive that. Okay, let's limit our conversation right now, going with the number of patents. We say that if it is number of patents, number of innovations, leadership capability, adaptability, right, ability to change, let's call it these 3 things, right? If my workforce capability needs to be really be these 3 areas, then I am more confident that I would be able to deliver number of innovations or number of patents which would really help me meet my future value strategic priority. Still, I haven't said who in HR going to do it. Remember, I haven't said that so far, and that comes next. This is our HR sub-functions. Now, if I ask you, can you take those 3 line items which we defined as the workforce capability and draw an arrow to the different HR functions which is there, which includes competency management, rewards recognition, career development, employee relations, performance appraisal, recruitment, succession planning, knowledge management, human capital strategy. Isn't it, these are the different processes we see every day in HR, right? Would you be able to draw arrows from 3rd vertical, which is nothing but workforce capabilities, to people processes now? Will you be able to draw? If we decided to have only 3 line items, which is leadership capability, adaptability, and change. So will you be able to now map it? Do you think it will be one-to-one mapping, or it may go to the multiple processes? Multiple processes, right? The point which I'm trying to drive here is, this is the biggest damage we do when we think from HR perspective, because most of the time, what we do, we always start from this side, isn't it? Right? You might be wondering, Manoj, in your diagram, your arrow is going that side, but you are coming from that side. Right? You were thinking about that. So that was intentional. This is what limits us. Because always, HR we call it a very siloed function. Within HR, we do have recruitment, learning, succession planning, performance management. They are also further siloed. Even they do not share data with each other. I don't know. Right? And if within that, if the recruitment person would start thinking, hey, driving innovation is, my priority, none of the other person, I'm sorry, the person is going completely wrong. Because just now you could feel it, that if I need to drive, innovation, right, I need to have 3 workforce capabilities. And those 3 workforce capabilities cannot be driven only by recruitment. If you really go and connect it, possibly it would lead to many more HR processes which is managed by different functions within HR. It means it's a collaborative effort which HR has to come together to help the CEO, not only one function of HR. Are you with me? Does it make sense? Any question? Yep. Say it again. Should we pick it up one more example? We'll move away from R&D. We can pick it up another priority from here, just to be more clearer. Yeah. Okay. Let's pick it up revenue growth, zero, right? As let's say as a bank, my priority for 2018, I'm making it. Okay, I'm not talking as a chief. So our priority is to really grow the business, right? In 18-19, we want to really go, let's say, 1.2 times of revenue which we generated in 2017. Okay, that's the priority I have set up as a, let's say, CEO. I made that a statement to investors. Now, if that is what it is, what do you think? Which are the KPIs would become important for me to start really tracking, measuring, so that I know if I'm progressing towards that plan or not? Maybe you can make it up. That's fine. You do not need to limit it to what I have put it here, right? You can always go beyond this. Ultimately, my point is that you should be able to connect this line item basically on your paper. The way it would appear is not only maybe this may go like this, one line. From here you may go and maybe 3 lines, and then these 3 lines may go and multiple lines would be going. Ultimately, you would be able to say, hey, X, Y, Z functions within HR has to come together to drive this one agenda. That's the point I'm driving. Now, coming to the example, which we picked it up, let's say, revenue growth, right? If revenue growth has to happen, what do you think? Which are the KPIs? So, more number of customers, right? Because we are talking about revenue. I'm not talking about profitability right now, right? So I'm not getting into efficiency and those things. Okay, I'm getting into revenue. More customers. Let's keep it simple, just to understand. More customers, more revenue. Now, customers. If I need to get more customers, and workforce who is facing or who is working towards really acquiring more customers, what are the capabilities they need to have? What are these capabilities would help us really acquire more customers? किसी ने अभी तक engagement नहीं दी. I'm surprised. Just think through it. If your employees are not really engaged, do you think they will put their heart and soul to really bring more customers? Especially people who are in field. If they are not engaged, they are not going to put their 100% to drive more sales for you. Right? So, again, these are the thoughts. Sometimes it is debatable as well. We can debate about it. But what I want to really think through it, how exactly you start from right side and land to the leftmost side. Now let's say if we say employee engagement, workforce performance, let's pick up leadership capability, these three things. In talent management, why not? Right? Let's say usually in banks, right, or let's say investment banks, the way it works is we do have advisors. And these advisors, they manage multiple set of customers. The day this advisor leaves, there is a high possibility all those customers who are managed by these advisors move with that guy because it's a relationship business. Right? It happens. So you have to really think, very hard that which are the capabilities are must to have here to deliver that KPI or which can contribute to this KPI. And then you go back and connect that capabilities. If I need to really enhance and build that capabilities further, which are the processes within HR would enable me to build that capabilities? Are you with me? Is it making some sense? If I'm losing you, let me know. You can think about it, because if I'm able to make you understand this, I'm done with my day. Sorry? Oh, I'm just waiting. Yeah. Yeah, I'm just giving time to read and let it settle. Okay. Yeah, and I'm sure most of us would be struggling with that part, okay, and especially not if not now, when you go back and start really drawing it, you will struggle with this, right? It's not because you are not aware, it is more of a confidence, right? If I'm connecting this, I'm sure that whether it will contribute to this or not, right? So it's not a lone decision making which you are going to do. It's a tool which is available to you. You are going to have your initial recommendation. You are going to speak to people, hey, if I build these things more from the workforce capability point of view, do you think it would help me driving into better productivity? Right? So it's a conversation again, joined up manner, right? But when you are having this conversation, your business guy is going to really be opening and listening you more, because now you are helping him or her deliver the agenda which he has already promised. The way we have been doing so far as a function is, I am recruitment. So I'm going to always think about hiring and my job is done. Right? So I always think from the process point of view, nothing beyond that. And that's where a struggle comes into picture, that I do not know how to really quantify the impact which I am delivering to the business. Another classic example, learning. What do? I delivered the program. After that, I do not know what happens. Why? The reason is because I don't know why I am delivering this program. The reason is because the program which I have delivered, whether that program is going to help me build A, B, C, which capability. If I knew that one, I can say that, okay, if I strengthen these capabilities, it would help me drive better productivity. And if I knew that that program can help deliver better productivity, it can help deliver better business outcome, whatever you want to pick it up from here, I think it will fall under efficiency. Right? Yep. So if you really go by that, even the objective setting, which is one of the favorite tasks and the important task for HR to do it every year, what we say, the objective needs to be top driven, right? Because you do not want to just build any objective for the department which is not adding value in a top. If you sum it up upward, if it is not adding value, it is no use of keeping it part of your objectives for the year, right? So it's part of the objective. So when, let's say, your CFO comes and says that, hey, this is the target number for us to achieve from revenue point of view, whichever is the revenue generating arms, they would be given a target for them, right? That target is broken. Now the target is, let's say, in our case, let's say if I do have 4 business lines which are revenue generating, the revenue total, revenue for the HSBC, whatever target you would have, that would be broken by the 4 business lines. And then 4 business lines does have their CHROs, right? Now that CHRO's role is what? Enable that particular business line meet that target which is given to them. From which perspective? From workforce capability point of view, which can enable them achieve that target. I know it's a slightly different approach, but we are fine having a silence in the room, thinking about it, because when there is a silence, it means you are thinking, you are challenging your thought process, which has not been the same so far. Okay, absolutely, I'm fine with this silence. But yes, just think about it if it does make sense to you. Because one of the biggest challenge which we have been having is connecting HR processes to the business outcome. Right? And we spoke about 2 examples, recruitment, we spoke about learning and development. I can go on and talk about any of these. Succession planning, people say, okay, just a tick mark, right? But how does it really contribute? Think from it. Your future value, total return to shareholders, do you think it would get impacted from the succession planning point of view? Maybe. Whether CEO succession planning is in place or not. All the critical roles in the organization, do we have a succession plan in place or not? Right? So you have to keep really thinking, debating about it. What you need to do that effectively, either you are aware about all the HR processes, then you can think through it, right? And then come out with it. If you are not aware about all the HR processes in your organization, because as I said, HR functions runs in silos, you need to bring people together to really have that conversation.
So whatever the people processes are there today in the left side, right? So it is more important that we have a quantifying way, right? So anything which doesn't speak numbers will not result into the business outcome, right? That's how. So there are few parameters in the people processes which I do believe that it cannot be quantified, or I do not have that wisdom to quantify those, at least today.
Let's pick it up one.
Yeah. Can we go with human capital strategy?
Anyone would like to take a shot on this?
It has to be quantified. That is what I needed to understand. Like, how do we quantify that?
Yeah, no, people say that I have I say personally that I have a very nice smile, and my friends say that you have a very cunning smile. So there is a huge gap of perception and perceived value. So I leave it there. No, I will not answer. Some question needs to be left unanswered, right? And then you use that to your own advantage depending on the situation. So, yeah, let's go on. So, shall we do one thing? Just for a common understanding in this room, and we are going to use a collective wisdom. We'll go and quickly deconstruct each and every boxes which have been put together, right? And you would be able to see there would be overlap between some boxes as well. So let's say human capital strategy, some people may call it workforce planning as well, while both the boxes are available.
Yes.
Right, so let's quickly we'll go through it, right? And again, these are guidelines, these are directions, right? There would be instances where you may not be able to quantify, but our intent is to really quantify. That's the reason we are doing this whole exercise, right? Something which has remained subjective, we want to put or bring numbers attached to it. Okay, competency management, and we are talking about processes. These are processes which is run by the organization. Okay, competency management. So different competencies and the proficiency level associated to it, right? Straightforward, everybody is on board? Okay. Rewards and recognition, straightforward, no ambiguity around this one. That's the reason I call it CMB is the right place to start analytics. Career development.
But how do we quantify that?
Wait. As of now, we are defining it processes perspective. Okay, career development. Yeah. No, not metric. That's a measurement. But career development, what this process does. This room is full of HR people. I mean,
To identify the next stars or to identify the next set of people for for anything which is coming new or for the existing business or the new business which is coming in.
Do you realize one more thing here that some of the processes may really get embedded into or maybe enabler to any other process here. So workforce planning, maybe career development could be one of the enabler to workforce planning.
Yes.
So keep that also in mind. It doesn't need to be a completely disjointed process, right? Okay. Employee relations. Employee relations. Highly debatable. Yeah, but at least we have some common understanding, right? We call it HR journalists. That's what they look after, employee relations, right? I'm not a HR guy, so you can challenge me if I go wrong onto the processes. Performance appraisal, clear?
Yeah.
Okay, recruitment, clear? Succession planning?
Yes.
Yeah, but definition is clear, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Knowledge management? How many HR does this?
We do a market research analysis, like with respect to when hiring for a third generation
Yeah, but
technology
here
or
we are
something.
talking about possibly knowledge management of the talent of the organization. Sometimes it may not fall under HR because some organization may have a knowledge management different, vertical altogether, and it may sit, I don't know. So I'll put it this way. The whole idea here is convert tacit knowledge into a knowledge which can be stored in a repository. So that when your talent moves out, that tacit knowledge doesn't go away with that individual. Little more beyond that, a documentation I feel more processed. I'm just avoiding that word, but yeah, kind of you could say, but intellectual property, yeah. And I'll tell you that why I'm avoiding documentation, because a lot of the internal forums itself is a knowledge management, where people come and really debate about a topic, how exactly they have solved, and especially in multiple geographies, organization, it becomes very, very important, right? Because you are not reinventing the wheel, right? Human capital strategy. This is where we started. Okay. Any other?
So strategy is something different, I would say. What I do understand that this would be something which an organization does something differently when compared to its competitors, which will put that company to an advantage.
So
Yeah.
yeah, you are getting there. I'm avoiding, but I don't have a choice but to really go to this. Okay. So when we talk about human capital, we are talking about human capital strategy, right? So when we talk about human capital, let's step back and talk about capital, right? In any organization, there are 6 type of capitals which we talk about: human, intellectual, financial, manufacturing, social, and educational, right? These are the 6 capital any organization really talks about. Now, out of these 6 capitals, there are 3 capitals which are managed by HR. Can you pick those 3? Human,
Human, social, intellectual.
intellectual. Do you think, as an organization, you need to have a strategy to really manage this collectively, these 3 capitals? And do you believe that that is different than only workforce planning? No? It would be same?
It, it,
It is different, right?
it could be different, yes.
So
Yeah.
human capital strategy is a much more,
Exactly.
bigger agenda for the
It's a high level stuff.
higher
Yeah.
level of that, where you are really thinking about how do you really go about managing these 3 capital of the organization.
Right.
Slightly clear? Slightly, right? Okay. So I did fairly good job. Then learning management is clear. Workforce planning is clear, I'm hoping. Right? Human capital infrastructure is clear. This is more around the tools, technology, and all the infrastructure. Right? Workplace design, right? This is the most interesting area for me nowadays. Because HR doesn't feel about today this is moving away completely from HR without really realizing, because workplace as a service has now started with a co-working space. I mean, you would be seeing the big change, right? I mean, today I never thought in 7 years that I would ever be moving to co-working space. We are moving to a co-working space. The reason is very simple. If my CRE has to do that fantastic job of creating that workplace design, I don't think they can match with what WeWork will do. WeWork will bring the knowledge of, collective knowledge of what they have done it across the world. And when you walk into their offices, the offices are designed for collaboration, creativity. As soon as you move into that room, you start feeling different, because it's all about, how do ecosystem of the environment really makes you think about something. So workplace design is another key area which has started evolving of late very fast, and change management is something which is not. Yeah. And think about it, if the internal HR or CRE has to manage that level of sophistication, it's a big task for them, right? Why should we really go about it, right? So even, HR, IT, CRE, it's converging. These functions are converging in future state. I think someone asked me in the last meeting that, what is the future of HR, right?
Yeah.
So we'll figure it out.
So, one question only on workplace design. Don't you think that are we seriously looking out for a workplace design as a something which is really significant? Because as of today, what I would say is people are more moving towards the remote side of work as well as work from home sort of things, like right. And then talking about the culture at Dell, 2 days you can come to office, like rest 3 days you can work from home. So do you really think that workplace design would be a significant something which is going to add significantly?
In fact, I would invite, CRE experts here. I would not call it CRE, but real estate experts. What's your opinion? Yeah, please.
Okay, so this happened last week. I mean, I was not here in the country because I had gone to the last class, right? I was in China. So before we went to China, I had taken our chairman to Hyderabad, where we designed this Bank of Singapore, BBS. So we designed their, I mean, as per their CEO, who is an Indian, who is based in Singapore, he walked through the office a couple of weeks back and he said, across the globe, the office that we designed for DBS in Hyderabad is one of the best. Okay, I mean they're showing it as a talent attracting technique by showcasing the video in their HR and recruitment portfolios to get people into their office. Having said that, our chairman, who's supposed to be pioneering in this workplace design segment, so to speak, he said, I don't relate to this. I mean, he made this open statement in the floor with the DBS employees out there. Because he's a 67-year-old gentleman. He doesn't understand that the workforce has progressed significantly in thought and in mindset. Having said that, like what she said, we works for her team. I've been sitting in cabins for the last 18 years out of 20 years. For the last 2 years, Sheetla and I have been sitting in cubicles. From an HR perspective, we find it a little hindering because we can't call our potential candidates because we have a corporate communication team sitting opposite us and they're also hearing what is the CTC being offered. We have so there are hindrances. From an HR perspective, an open office might not work, but like you're from HR, right? But she's saying HR, this particular WeWork space, which also we are designing, we are also partnering with WeWork. It works for some people, doesn't work for certain people. When you say work from home, when we talk about it from a macro level, I'm sure you HSBC, coming back to HSBC, I was attending this conference about a couple of years back. So this is 2015. In 2015, this lady of HR, I'm forgetting her name, she said she's already planned her workforce for the next 7 years. For the next 7 years, they've already planned how much they're going to hire and where they're going to take offices. Okay, keeping that in, if you keep that particular point in mind, you also have to realize that they also have to optimize on real estate cost. So they want certain people, certain segment or certain percentage of population to work from home. Okay, so they will always be, I mean, you can have the best caterer. To give a very generic example, you can have the best caterer serving the best food. Like in our company, we serve food at Nagarjuna, the Nagarjuna restaurant Residency Road. It's free food. People don't like it. The same person goes on the weekend with his wife, stands in the staircase out there to get that meal. We're serving it free of cost in our company and people don't like it. Okay, so we can never make everybody happy. Okay, but yes, there is a paradigm change happening from a realist perspective. We work for some people, it doesn't work for some people. It works for her. If I would be comfortable working in WeWork, I don't think so. But I am designing WeWork spaces for our customers.
Oh.
Yeah? So if I can add to that, and thanks for really bringing
Thanks.
the perspective, because what you are hearing is directly coming from someone who is into that particular business, right? More as a business, if I really look at onto the receiving side of such kind of a space, see, working from home and working from office, it's a blended approach because, as he said, you need to have a medium which can really satisfy maximum of your workforce requirement with the optimal return on investment getting on this, right? So you have to not just look at more from work from home perspective. See, work from home is the flexibility offered to employees, but think about it, the businesses also gets saving out of it, right? Because number of cubicles are less and those things.
Right.
IBM has been the big promoter of this. Did you hear that now IBM is pulling it back because their productivity is going down, right? So you can never ever take away offices. The reason is because we are human beings and you can work 1 or 2 days sitting at home, but you want to really come back and interact with the individuals, interact with the people. Not only that, it depends on the kind of project which you are working on, right? Even in the gig economy, the expectation is that people would really come together and work on it, right? War zone. It would always get created where you got to deliver something, you got to sit next to each other, right? So these are the blended approach. I don't think there is any approach where we can say that we would be completely own real estate versus completely working from home, but it would be a blended approach. I mean, we have been talking about Google, not about their capability, but their offices for I don't know how many years, right? The reason is because it acts also as a brand and reputation for the organizations, and it attracts talent, right? So that's right.
So, but the reason why I talked about this or why I brought this to notice is because there are people, like if you talk about a certain segment, like a fresher would be more interested coming to office. You compare the same with a guy who would be having a 7+ or an 8+ years of an experience to a 15 years of a guy, right? Person. They would say, I would look forward for more flexibility. I would just very candidly say, my boss, my India partner who is there, he's been working from home since last 7 years. So that's how.
Again, different individual, different priorities, different business lines, different designs, and we cannot really make something very generic here that this is what it looks like. It is always going to be a blended approach. One thing I have learned in GE is do, undo, redo. We keep really doing things what really works, because ecosystem keeps changing, and people keep really evolving out of things. So yeah. Yeah, so one is the certainly save, but one thing I mean, we have deviated from the topic though, but one thing I wanted to add here is we should not get confused between flexibility and working from home, right? To me, the flexibility is today I have to take my son to, let's say, hospital. Can I come to office instead of coming 12:30? I'll come 2:30, right? As an individual, I look at that as a flexibility, and that helps me run my show, right? Work from home, the day I really need to be at home to take care of anything personal side, I can work from home, but I do not need to take leave, right? So I think a lot of people are moving towards flexibility rather than really calling it work from home. Okay, and that's where it is getting translated now into well-being, which is much more broader topic. Okay, I will avoid that to really be spoken here, but that's where we are headed towards. Okay, coming back to the topic now. So 1:30 we will leave for lunch. 10 minutes I want to make some investment here in terms of each one of us going back to your notebook and think about the strategies which your CEOs or the function head has put together. I'm operating here right now. So before we leave for lunch, your notebook should be having 1 or 2 items listed. We'll go for lunch. Once we come back, we'll continue.